Note to oneself, do not moderate the same conference where you're also going to speak. So you're going to get some more of me in this workshop, but I'm sharing the stage with two of my finest colleagues and friends, Janique Svedberg, who is a recovery coach, among many other things, and she's going to do a presentation on what recovery coaching is. And she had a really good way of coming into this presentation by John Kelly, who talked about recovery coaching. And on my left side, I have Camilla Kuylenstierna, who is the first and only ARISE certified family interventionist in Scandinavia. So she's going to share her experience on working with family interventions. And I am going to talk a little bit about my experiences with using different e-health tools in the recovery process. So I'm going to let Janique take the stage and start.
Thank you. So my name is Janique Svedberg, and I am a woman in long-term recovery. That means that I've been sober and clean for 386,000 days. Try to figure that one out. It is actually quite humbling to be a speaker after the speakers today. Heather Hayes, which is one of the best speakers I know, and Professor Kelly. I work with a recovery coach and sober companion, also called a million different names. It's a business that exploded in America and just now coming into Scandinavia and Europe. I am actually kind of going to just quit those slides because I don't like myself up there. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, tiny. I've been in recovery for a long time, and I was in treatment. I've been living in New York City for 33 years, and I was in treatment in Florida for 1.5 years. I really needed it. Or as he said, my D2s were shocking. They were really bad, my D2s. And so I was there for a long time. And while I was there, people went in and out, same people. And I thought, what is going on out there? You know, people are not keeping themselves sober. And just like everything we spoke about today, I understood that in treatment, you're in a bubble, and then you come home. And then you come home. And that's where people, if they relapse, they relapse. So I knew, sitting there in treatment, that is going to be tough to come back, right? I knew that. I had fantastic sponsors. I had fantastic therapists, and they told me to laugh a lot. So I bought myself a Chihuahua. And I'm laughing a lot. But when I did come back, I heard about something called recovery coaches, which started 25 years ago, maybe it's even 30 years now. It was Steve Tyler and Joe Perry from Aerosmith. They were called the Toxic Twins. They were big heroin users, and they were really, really tough to be on tour with them. Their albums, the record sales went down, and Bob Timmons were the first person called a recovery coach. The management hired him to tour with them and to help them. They went first to treatment and then back on tour, and Bob Timmons coined the word recovery coach. Now, every single business, when they're new, they're like all these people going, I'm going to be a recovery coach. I'm going to be a recovery coach because then I can hang out with rock stars or movie stars, right? So the business of recovery coaching went, woo! And then it went, bam! Because someone took money or someone started sleeping with someone or someone relapsed and all of these things happened. And when I got into the business, New York State OASIS, the Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Disorder, said, stop. We cannot have people just saying they are recovery coaches without any kind of schooling. So they made a course, which I now teach, called Recovery Coach School. You saw it here also. He had a CSAR on here. A Recovery Coach Academy in United States or in New York. And that's what I took that course, and I loved it. And because I'm such a good addict, I became a teacher, and then I started teaching everywhere. And then I went back to Europe. As you can hear, I am Swedish. And if you're in Stockholm, you can hear that I was born in Göteborg. And so I took it over here, and I started teaching. And Anna was actually on my first class. We had a riot. We had such a fun time. But about 2 of those dates, because it's a 5-day course, 2 of those were very American. It was really about suing people. And so I said, this is not going to work. So Anna and I, we rewrote few things. And I went back to the United States, and I said, can I do this in in Europe? And we rewrote these 2 days. And they said, yes. So I got the stamp of approval to teach in Europe. So what do we do? And I loved the slides before that Professor Kelly had. We are the bridge back to life. We are that human touch. We are the people that will help you when you get home. We are, and I love this, but we are detectives. We start talking to the treatment teams. We start talking to the family. We are educated, because you have to be educated these days to become a recovery coach, in relapse preventions, in trigger supports, in things that the people that you work with don't even know, in family therapy. We are not therapists, but we will guide you. We would love you until you love yourself. We will find the meetings that you like. If they're smart, 12-step, church, whatever it is. So we are a strength-based support system for people and their families. Bridge back to life. You can look at this more closely later. We are not sponsors in a 12-step program. I get this a lot. Well, you're doing what a sponsor's doing. No, we're not. Because we do not work with a big book or the 12 steps. You have to do that in the meetings, which is beautiful. I'm a big 12-stepper myself. So we don't take that from anybody. We are not primary treatment. We don't treat people. We'll help you to find a treatment. Or we will help you and the treatment team in rehab to find good IOP, outpatient program, or a really good therapist, or a trauma therapist, or whatever that is that you might need, working closely with the treatment team, right? We are, we are really just a support system around you. So how can recovery coach or sober companion help? How can we help a family? Well, we can definitely be the person that would be a part of the person coming back from, or the client coming back from, let's say, a treatment center. We will help the family of they don't need to be the police, the bank, the driver, everything that we are, right? As an anhörig, or as a partner, or a family member, we become all of that. When you have addiction in the family, you become police, you check everything. Are they high? Are they not high? Having a recovery coach, you kind of like, woof. We have someone there that will help me, that will talk to me and the client. It's that third party. A company. This I love. I love working. We are insurance for companies. I've been working a lot with Volvo, Stena Line, SIS, for pilots, for people that are in recovery, maybe in new recovery. Think about this. You have a gambling addiction. Maybe you have been to treatment, but you are a CEO, let's say, and you need to go to Las Vegas. Good luck. Find a 12-step meeting. Not that easy. Not that easy. So then you would travel with someone called Sober Companion. They would help you while you're there with trigger support, maybe finding a GA meeting or other support meetings. But it's another person there will help you with the triggers and stuff like that. I'd worked with a politician once, and she was on stage quite a bit, doing her thing. And she had such a stage fear that she peed a little bit in her pants every time she walked in. nobody knew this. It was a horrible thing for her because she couldn't hold it and she was so nervous. Just having me in the background, and I knew her, I knew the treatment team around her. And because she always drank before she went on stage, she couldn't do that anymore. She was terrified. So we worked. I was with her when she was touring during the political scene, right? And just having me standing in the background, just going, you can do it. It helped her. And the more she did it, now you can see her walk on stage and says like, hello, everybody. And it's like, yeah. I was just there going, hi. But I was there. So that's, for insurance for companies, it's fantastic. Most of my income, I would say, is from companies that hire me to be not a babysitter, to be a recovery coach or sober companion. Also, if someone relocates, right? So maybe Volvo relocate to India. Now you have a whole family going to India. Well, guess what's going in the family? Addiction. And maybe recovered addiction, but still. Maybe they need a sober companion or recovery coach to travel there with them for a while to set it up. The person, right? So of course we're there for the person. The person, it will change that all that fantastic stuff we learn in treatment. Now you just bring it with you. He said, in treatment, and then you get out, and you saw those spikes there. Well, let's not have those spikes, right? So we just go on. And we don't work with them for the rest of our lives. We work with them until they are feeling better, and they're strong enough, and they have started to learn how to do fun things sober, right? The insurance of it is what I just spoke about. It really is. And I'm not just meaning money. I mean also for families. Insurance of just knowing there is someone there for that person. Super important. And recovery coaching and education. By the way, my admin woman, she loves these little guys. Aren't they cute? And she's having fun, so she puts these little guys on all my slides. So recovery coaching education, this is what I talked about before. It is super, super, super important that there is an education, and you go and you get an education, right? So we don't do the wrong thing. So we understand the brain. We understand what's trigger support, relapse prevention. We understand when the doctors say different things. We understand what they're talking about, really. So recovery coach has to be certified, and that's why I think New York State was so good at putting that in there. Insurance, when you have a certification, and this is now I work around internationally. Insurance is important when you are out there working with someone, that you have a really good insurance. If I travel with someone and something happens, you need to be insured. And if you don't have that in education, you can't get insurance. So that's really important. Cultural. I spoke to someone about that before. That is so key. I was brought up in New York. I work in New York, and I came to Sweden, and the way we treat here is just different. So culturally, I needed to really step back and understood how Sweden works. And then I had a job in Dubai. Now, that was completely different. I wasn't really allowed to look the man in his eyes, right? It was that kind of culture. Being a Swede, I was like, excuse me. We look at each other here. But I can't do that. I'm working with this family. Culturally, I need to know that. So that's super important to know where you work, what country you're working. I was working in Russia. I was teaching in Russia. It was the toughest class I had, but I loved it because the Russians still have the hierarchy of the man is the boss of the family, and then all the sons and the daughter and the mom is down here. I'm not going to change that, but I need to know that when I go and teach, right? Or when I work in Russia, I need to know that. So all of these things you learn. Ethical. How you dress, how you talk, how you sit, when you sit. Do you say thank you? Do you eat? How do you eat? It's so many ethical things. What are we allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? How are you allowed to speak about certain things? In Muslim countries, they're not allowed alcohol, right? There's against the law. So all of these ethical standards are super important also. So you can't just like be a recovery coach and then travel to all different countries and be like, ah, you need to know. Google. And the language. Not everybody speaks English. Did you know that? Not even here in Sweden. Not everybody speaks English. I have had recovery coaches that took a job in another country and they were like, whoops, the families didn't speak English, you know. So that's super important. We need more recovery coaches with different languages, a lot more, because there's so much out there, right? That I hope was 15 minutes, because I'm done. You're done. Good. So Sober Academy is the academy where we teach. So if you want to become an interventionist or a recovery coach or sober companion, just go into soberacademy.com. Thank you. That's for you.
Okay. Different kind of energy coming up. I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal experience of working with e-health tools in the recovery process. I am not in the recovery process myself. I come from an entirely different background, but I work a lot with people that are in different stages of recovery. And this is me. I do a lot of different things. I'm a writer. I've written a book about alcohol consumption and how do you know if you pass the threshold of not being able to control your drinking anymore. I'm a certified CRA therapist, I'm a supervisor, I'm a recovery coach. I'm also the representative for Castle Craig, so if you're interested in how to help clients to get to Castle Craig, I'm the one who you phone. And I do treatment for youth, adults and family members. And that's one way of explaining who I am. Another one is this. This is my daughter. Her name is Ayla. And if she knew that I was showing you this picture, she would die of shame. Literally die. Guess how old she is now? 13? I am the most embarrassing thing in the whole wide world. I'm even more embarrassing than her father. And I'll tell you, he is embarrassing. This is a picture from her first Christmas. She is born in March, so she's about 16, 18 months old. And she has just opened her Christmas present from her grandfather. And it's a doll. And what you can't see is that she has the exact same facial expression as the doll. So why is she doing that? Why? Because that's something we do. We mirror each other. There are even parts of the brain where you can see this happening when we mirror other people's behavior, because we want to belong. We want to belong to a family, to a group of people. And I loved Heather's speech this morning. It gave me goosebumps. Because what she did is to remind us that these are the people we're talking about. We're talking about our children, my husband, my father, my doctor, somebody else's brother. It's not about anybody else, it's about us, and it's about this little figure. Her brother is more interested in looking for the next package in the back. I am overly interested in alcohol, in a good way. I think it needs to be said over and over and over again that alcohol is the largest problem we have when it comes to addiction, especially in Sweden. We tend to like to speak about other addictions. I used to work for the military forces. I ran their drug prevention program for a number of years. And all the military officers that I trained back in those years, they were really, really interested to talk about illegal drugs. Guess how big the illegal drug problem was in the military forces? About this. Guess how big the problem with alcohol was in the military forces? like this. But we like to talk about somebody else, somebody else's problem, and something that doesn't really connect to us. But alcohol is a much larger cause of death and illness compared to cocaine, heroin, and cannabis put together. Very well written in a book by a Swedish researcher called Marcus Heilig. What is e-health? Well, this comes from the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare. By health, we mean physical, mental, and social well-being. E-health is about using digital tools and sharing information digitally to achieve and maintain a good level of health. Examples of e-health can be e-prescriptions that we get every day when we go to our GP here in Sweden. We don't get paper prescriptions anymore, we get e-prescriptions. Booking appointments online, online meetings, CBT sessions, medical equipment, activity wristbands. That was I think the biggest Christmas present this year in Sweden was that little watch that records everything from sleep to breathing to how many steps you take every day. That's also e-health. Therapy sessions online and health apps is what I've used in my practice most. Professor Kelly talked about meetings online, which is a wonderful thing. There's a lot of people with social phobia or people that are very shy that really can't get to a meeting. It's such an obstacle for them to get out of their apartment, to go into a group. They really need the connection. They really need to meet other people and the social support, but you just can't get there. And meetings on the web is a fantastic thing for those patients. I work a lot with therapy sessions online also. I have telephone meetings with my clients. I have Skype meetings, and it works wonderfully well. I didn't think it would when I first started. I thought it was really, really important that we were in the same room and talked to each other and could see each other in the eye, but that's not true to my experience. It works really well to do therapy online or with the web. Some of the speakers today have talked about how we perceive addiction differently from other diseases, and that's that's also true when it comes to e-health. Could we even imagine to effectively treat diabetes without letting the patient monitor and treat his own blood sugar levels? Could we even imagine doing that in Sweden? I don't think we can. But when it comes to alcohol treatment, that's exactly what we do in addiction treatment. We actually make the patients come into the clinic to leave urine samples. We actually do a lot of blood tests, so they come into the clinic. So very little of the monitoring of the recovery process is put in the hand of the recovering addict himself. And I think that's about to change. So why should we use e-health? Yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons why we should be using more e-health, and some of the reasons is up here. It gives the client more control over the treatment process. In a little while, I'm going to talk to you about specifically a little technical device that I've used that allows the patient to monitor his own blood alcohol level, to actually record the number of sober days using an app and a breathalyzer. It increases, in my experience at least, it increases self-efficacy, that feeling of, I can do this. That's where many of my patients fail. They're very motivated. They really, really, really want to stop drinking, but they don't think they can. They feel helpless. And actually doing things, even a small thing like monitoring their own drinking, gives a sense of, I can do this. I can control a part of the process, which is a very, very important thing. It also makes the treatment more flexible geographically, outside office hours and outside the treatment room. So for a person who lives in Lapland, in the northern part of Sweden, the nearest meeting can be a 2-hour drive away, a physical meeting. It can take 2 hours to drive to an addiction clinic. E-health leaves us with the possibility of moving the treatment to the client. They don't have to come to us, we can come to them. So it makes treatment more accessible and more flexible. And when you use that kind of a feedback thing that I'm using, it gives objective feedback in real time. And I'm going to give you some examples a little later in this presentation. I think for me, it has a lot to do with what's in yellow on this image. When you give the power over to the person in treatment and gives them responsibility for monitoring and actually doing things, the focus changes. The focus changes from talking about getting sober to actually doing it. And for some patients, that's really important. We used to think that by talking to a person for an hour once a week, we could help them recover. We've seen in several presentations today that it's probably not enough for many patients. So when we can actually get patients more involved in their own treatment and actually doing things, that's a good thing. So here's what I've been using for the last 2 years in my private practice. I've used a breathalyzer, an app, and a care portal. It's a very smart little Swedish device. It was invented by a group of Swedish pioneers, and many of them with their own knowledge about what it is like to be in recovery. So it builds on a breathalyzer. I think if I can make the pointer work. How do I make the pointer work? There. There's a breathalyzer, the size of a small matchbox. The patient has a phone, and I have a care portal in my computer. So what happens is that the patient is scheduled to do breathalyzer tests, starts his little machine here, starts his phone, and makes a test. So he breathes into the breathalyzer measures the level of alcohol in the breath, and then the information is sent to the care portal in real time. And if I want to, as the treater, as the therapist, I can get this information in like 2 seconds. So, since I work with very few patients at a time, I actually have the text message connected. So if one of my clients misses to do his breathalyzer test, or have alcohol in their breath, I get a message immediately, which gives me information in real time on what's happening with the client. This should always, and this is important, this should always be used in combination with a treatment program. So this is not treatment. This is a device that we can use to increase effectivity in the treatment. So it can be a very useful tool for relapse prevention, for enhancing the treatment outcome, but it's not treatment in itself. And it should always be used by a therapist. Always. So what can this little device do? Yeah, we do sobriety tests. It's a great communication tool. We can track behavior change. It allows me to give support between sessions. We can do relapse prevention, and we can reduce harmful drinking. And in this little device, I can also ask questions about the recovery process. How have you been sleeping? What about the problems in your life? So we can communicate through this even if we don't meet. So what are the advantages? Yeah, I think for me, it has a lot to do with better information in real time. In my experience, it also reduces anxiety among family members. The family members are so stressed all the time. Is my loved one sober? Is my loved one drinking? What's happening? What's happening? But with this device, the anxiety level among the family members reduces. It makes the recovery process more flexible, makes the patient more active, and reduces anxiety. It gives a daily reminder about the process that the client is in. So 2 times a day or 3 times a day, my phone buzzes in my pocket, and I have to do something. And it reminds me, okay, I'm in recovery, and that's the long-term commitment. And the recovery process can be prolonged by using this device to fit the changes in the brain that we heard about earlier today. Challenges? Of course there are challenges. We're bringing in new technology. I like this quote. It doesn't translate really well, but in Swedish it is grisen blir inte tjockare för att du väger den oftare. So if you're a pig farmer, the pig doesn't get fatter if you put it on the scales more often. It gets fatter because you give it better food. It's how you treat the pig. So who is going to receive this information? I never ever connect family members. They never get this information. Because in my experience, it can increase the family members' anxiety if they are constantly checking in this app and looking for are they sober or not. What are we going to do with the information? When are we going to process it? And can it be used for the wrong reasons? Yes, it can. It can absolutely be used for the wrong reasons. For example, if there is a, what do you call it when you fight about children? Custody? Yes. Custody cases. It can be used with parents are fighting over the custody of the children. So put in the wrong hands, this can be really harmful, I believe. I'm going to end with a few quotes taken from a really interesting article written by a woman called Jessica Eriksson at the University of Lund. She's done a little study where she interviewed a few patients that had been on this device for different length of time. But here comes a few quotes. I have lied so much in my addiction that I automatically question myself when I get the question about going to meetings or drinking, even if I know I'm telling the truth. This app thing helps me keeping track of the truth. This is about motivation. My therapist is sitting on the other side of the line and sees that I'm sober and doing my sobriety test without us having to speak with each other or meet more than our regular meetings. It makes me feel good, safe, and reinforced that she sees and knows that I'm sober. Connection, communication. I thought it became more fun, or fun is maybe not the right expression, but more meaningful to meet with my therapist when there was something black and white to talk about. He could see how I had answered the questions about my moods and sleep during the past week. Before, I found it hard to share with somebody without this kind of opening. Conclusion. E-health tools can make addiction treatment more accessible and flexible. It can reach populations that feel that they don't fit in the regular treatment that we offer. It can increase the patient's sense of self-efficacy and control. It can definitely have fewer side effects compared to medication, and I'm especially thinking about anti-abuse here. No side effects that I know of with this little smart device. And it can also feel less invasive than medical tests. And that's all. Thank you. And now over to my dear friend Camilla on family intervention.
Thank you. I'm going to talk to you about family interventions in Sweden. Just short about myself. My name is Camilla Kuylenstierna. Here is something for Sam to pronounce as a surname. I'm the first Arise interventionist in Sweden. I actually opened up the market in 2012 after being trained by Heather in Savannah, Georgia, and some other fantastic mentors. After having done that, I decided that I was going to open up the market here, and people thought I was absolutely nuts. And maybe I am, but it's okay. I'm the author of the award-winning book Ansvarsfull, and the importance here with award-winning is not me. The important is that I got to talk to 500 of the most prominent people within the corporate industry about addiction when I got the award. Because what I wanted to do with the book was to erase the stigma, to tell them about the disease of addiction being the most democratic disease that there is. And today I specialize in family interventions and I hold seminars. Why? I get this question a lot. How can you? Isn't it horrible to walk into a room with all these traumatized, sad people? They're crying, they're angry. Isn't it just, what a job. Why do you do it? Well, my first answer is this family, which is my family. I grew up in a family with a deeply alcoholic mother and a father who was actually a functioning alcoholic. My entire family told me that my mom was a bad person. She had nothing to give. She just took from people. She was a sick person that we really shouldn't put any notice to her, and there's nothing we can do. But she was in rehab. This is one of the pictures. She was put in rehab so many times, I don't know, I can't even count them all. And what I did as a child, I stayed with her in rehab because I thought that it was my job to make my mother happy. It was my job to keep control of my mom and my dad because nobody else would. So where do you think that led me? Hello? I became addicted. And just like Anna said, you mirror yourself in your immediate family and surroundings. So of course, alcohol fits me like a glove. And I also, the other part of me, became very, very ambitious. So on the outside, I was a brand manager, had a good pay, lived in an affluent area, and I felt horrible on the inside. Horrible, and I couldn't even imagine talking to anyone about it. Long story short, I came to my grips and finally got the willingness from I don't know where in 2005, and so I became sober. My second why is the way that we in Sweden talk about addiction. Girls get more intoxicated than guys when they drink. Every fifth man drinks too much alcohol. Freedom is to say no to alcohol. This is funny. Which is alcohol really the most dangerous drug? I mean, it depends on, does it matter? Drugs are not good. Alcohol doesn't make us show our true selves. We could save more lives when people OD. When people OD. Relapse is not due to lack of will. The children are in the worst situation ever when they grow up in alcoholic families. Narcotics politics has to have focus on saving lives, yada, 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 yada. I think that when we talk about this in Sweden, we talk about what's going on right now or what happens afterwards or what we could do afterwards. And so one of my biggest thing is I want to know why. Why do our loved ones and their families get caught up and hijacked by addiction? What happens before? Because if we know what happens before, then we can prevent it. And that's what I do, why I do family interventions. You've heard about the ARISE method so far. And I'm going to take you through it this quick. Usually it takes about an hour and a half to explain to someone what it really means. Most people that call me in the pre-phase when the phone rings, let's say Sarah calls me. She will say to me, I've heard from a family member or a colleague or a friend, whatever, that you do something called something. Swedish people can't even pronounce the word intervention. They don't know what it is. So I explained to her what it is, and she tells me about her husband's brother, Michael, who is completely caught up in addiction. He's isolated himself. He has 4 children. His girlfriend is traumatized by this. Sarah is somewhat on the outskirts, but she's seeing her entire family fall apart. What do? We've tried everything. Can you please help me? Okay, so we agree. Yes, of course I can help you. Then this starts. This is where she decides, together with the family, who is going to be in the intervention. Then I start to interview the family, because I talk to each and single person who's going to be in the intervention. And I do it because I need to know the pattern of the family, so that I can see something that they probably can't. This phase can take anything between 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the family. And I actually have, only because I put on myself to really implement this process on the Swedish market. These people can call me any time of day, weekdays, weekends, when they have questions. Because they're actually buying something they don't know what it is. They don't know what an intervention is. In the US, a lot of people do. Here, they don't know. They just know it's something. So, I explained to them that this meeting that we're having, it's not a confrontation, it's a meeting, a family meeting, which I will help them moderate. We talk from love, respect, and concern. There is no guilt, shame, blame, you're bad, yada yada, none of that. We're doing this because your family is hurting, because you're in love with each other, and you're hoping for the best. And once that's done, one of the family members or two invites the addicted individual to join. This is not a place where sometimes it's necessary to do an intervention hardcore right away, but first step is to invite them. Intervention time. No matter how many times I tell the family that this is a family disease, your son is sick, he's hijacked by the disease. He's an amazing person. Sometimes I even have the addicted individual call me because they don't know, what am I going to do? Am I going to go into a room and my family is going to throw rotten tomatoes at me? No matter how much I talk to the individuals, this is the feeling they have. You have the addicted individual over here holding on to the disease with his bare life, because that's all he has. He doesn't think that he can survive without it. And then you have the family on the other hand thinking that they have to be really harsh and confrontative, and that's the emotional status. Until you pick up the golden key. And the golden key is the Genogram. And I'm so happy that we talked about, Dr. Montan talked about the Genogram. It's a family tree based on trauma, crisis, depression, addiction, anything that could affect the family. So let's say this is Michael. And we start from the top, and you can see that his father's parents, his grandpa committed suicide, and his grandmother became depressed. She was depressed, but she was also one of these chaotic, dramatic people. The other half, his mother's parents, his grandfather was a war veteran, and his wife depressed too. His father's sibling, one committed suicide. One, we don't know where it is. He or she just disappeared, left the country, couldn't deal with the family. And then we had one who was an alcoholic, now sober, but committed a suicide attempt. And his father is an alcoholic. Then we look at his mother's side. He says his mother is really harsh. She's really strict and straight. She has a sibling who is alcoholic. She has another one who's a workaholic. And that's an interesting thing, I think, that sometimes society, we call them really, really successful. I have a friend who is really successful, and he's really rich, and he goes to the psych ward every time he made a deal and earned a lot of money, he goes to the psych ward. It's an addiction. And then Michael's spouse, she's burnt out. She's completely traumatized. She can't take it anymore, so she can't go to work. And his siblings, one's a sex addict, one's depressed, one is okay, and one was raped in her teenage years. And when you do genograms like this with families, let's say the rape part. I did an intervention in Vienna a couple of months ago. And as always, could you fix him? That was like the families. Just fix him because he's annoying. He's destroying the family. He's drinking and drugging and whatever he's doing. We found an aunt who was like 92 years old who'd been raped at gunpoint and never told the family. In the intervention, that was the first time she mentioned it. By which her sister looks at her and says, "Are you sure it was at gunpoint?" Yeah. So her sister was just emotionally shut off. So, and when the family sees this, you can also see that, like, this side of the family is emotionally silenced. They don't talk about emotions, you just brush off and you go on. What do you do with the emotions? Something. You drink, you do drugs, you sex, you have to do something. And the other side is addicted to drama. Everything becomes big. Huge. Because we're addicted to it. We have to have drama all the time to live. So once we sit, and this takes, 4, 5, 6 hours. The one in Vienna went on for 2 days. Then we look at this together, and I ask the family, remember that there are 4 children here. Then I just ask the family, and I say, look at the legacy that you're carrying around. Look upon all the grief, sadness that you're going through, and that it's just pouring down from generation to generation. Do you want your 4 children to have the same emotional luggage? And everybody goes, no! Perfect. Wonderful, because now together you have the opportunity, stop it. Today, together, we agree we're not going to do this anymore. And that's when you get Michael in this case, he understands he's with the family. The family is united against the disease. And that's where you've lifted the guilt and shame and blame and all of that. And they understand, wow, it's all of us. We're on one side. The addiction is our enemy, not Michael. Once you've done that, the family can start talking to one another. And this is all in a very controlled and moderated form. And they tell Michael what they love about him, how the situation is affecting them. They're not allowed to point to him. They can only talk from themselves. And what they wish to happen. Normally, take the help that's being offered. It's amazing. And people cry. Grown-up men cry. It is, it's fantastic. It's a collective grief over what addiction does to your family. So, and if he says yes, then arrangements are being taken care of immediately and organized in advance. Whatever he's going to do, if he's going to inpatient, outpatient, therapist, 12-step meetings, whatever is the most suitable. Because me, like most of us I understand, has understood that we need to look upon the individual and create the treatment plan for that person by person, instead of having everybody being treated the same way. If he says no, then we'll sit down again and go around the room and state consequences from a loving manner. And we might add on more members in a second meeting. In any case, the family members get assignments because this is a family disease, so everybody needs help. So everyone is being offered help one way or another. Then is aftercare. We've talked about this. Treatment plans. Each family continues to do what they have said that they're going to do. Because just like we talked about with the tree, like Professor Kelly said, that if you send away someone who's addicted, they come back to still sick family, they're going to become sick again. So it's really important that the entire family gets the support that they need. And then we have 3 follow-up meetings to slowly help and support the family move on. Really simple. And very important. We've talked about it. It doesn't, I mean, addiction doesn't go away in a month. It could take years. So when selecting a family intervention service, and this is really important because I've actually been in situations where you have people who just woke up one day thinking they're interventionists. And I've had families calling me completely traumatized because you have someone who thinks they're an interventionist, they have no training whatsoever, and they destroy families. Because we're talking lives here, not products, lives. So researcher interventionist, what kind of certifications do they have? How many interventions have they done? Do they have references? Read up on the method used. What does your method consist of? Is there any research, any empiristics, publications, anything? Secure professional security. Can you promise me confidentiality? Are you a mandated reporter? I always tell the family that, because people in Sweden are scared to death about the social services. So will you call the social services? And I said, yes, I will. If I see that there's a child being neglected, abuse, then I will call. And if you don't want me to, and you have that in my family, I'm not going to work with you. Because I have to. Not legally, but ethically. And get a clear view on the content. What will the intervention contain? What does the process look like? And how much will it cost ahead? Because you don't want where it's like, yeah, but that price was only for the first 15 minutes. And make sure you feel comfortable with the selected service. You feel safe. You feel like you've been treated with respect. So think about this. And I always say that I find that the most successful interventions I've done is when the family can hardly remember my face when I leave. Because I'm not the important person in the interventions, the family is. So the less they remember of me, the better the intervention. And by that, I just want to say it's a beautiful day to save lives, as any day. Thank you.